The great chamber of the United Nations was heavy with silence, as if the air itself was holding its breath. World leaders sat in their assigned seats, listening, some weary, some eager, and others indifferent. At the podium stood Donald Trump, his voice resonating with the confidence of a man who believed he still commanded the stage of history. "America will lead Africa again," Trump declared, his hand cutting through the air as if sealing the words into destiny. For a brief second, the chamber did not stir. No applause, no immediate dissent, just the echo of the statement bouncing across marble walls and polished floors. Trump smirked faintly, expecting the quiet to mean compliance, the silence to confirm submission. In his mind, he had reaffirmed America's paternal role in world affairs, one where Africa was little more than a dependent child. But silence can be dangerous. It is not always agreement. It can be the calm before a storm. From the rows of African delegations, a figure stood up. It was President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, young, sharp-eyed, and unyielding. His rise was not dramatic in movement, but the energy in the room shifted instantly. Every eye turned. With a steady, unwavering voice, Traoré declared, "We are not your colonies." The words cracked like thunder across the chamber. A statement so simple, yet so devastating in its clarity. No anger, no unnecessary ornamentation, just raw truth delivered before the world. Trump blinked, momentarily caught off guard. The script he had expected, the silence of deference, had been torn apart in an instant. The chamber erupted, not in chaos, but in energy. African delegations erupted into applause, some even standing, their faces lit with pride. The Western delegations were split, some shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others stared in disbelief at the audacity of this young African leader. Reporters scrambled for their devices, cameras zoomed in, and social media feeds began to fill with captions and clips. A ripple was turning into a wave. Trump attempted to recompose himself, gripping the edges of the podium. But it was too late. The moment was no longer his. It belonged to Traoré. For centuries, Africa's story in global politics had been written by others, carved up in colonial boardrooms, exploited in foreign factories, and reduced in global narratives to statistics of poverty and aid. But here, in this moment, Traoré was not speaking for Burkina Faso alone. He was the voice of centuries of struggle, the unspoken defiance of ancestors who had resisted chains, the cries of independence movements, the chants of students demanding dignity, the prayers of farmers who refused to bow. "We are not your colonies" was more than a rebuttal. It was a declaration of ownership over history. He did not sit back down immediately. He continued, his voice carrying across the chamber like a drumbeat. "Africa does not need new masters disguised as partners. We do not need to be told who will lead us. The time when others carved our destiny is over. We will lead ourselves, for ourselves, and by ourselves." His words carried conviction, but more importantly, they carried evidence of a generational shift. Traoré was not alone in thought. He was the symbol of millions of Africans who refused to see their lands as pawns in someone else's geopolitical chessboard. The chamber had grown still again, but this time not with silence of submission. It was silence of recognition, of understanding that something irreversible had just been declared. Within minutes, international news agencies broadcast the exchange. Headlines appeared almost instantly. Traoré confronts Trump at UN. "We are not your colonies." Africa speaks back. A historic stand at the United Nations. On social media, the hashtag "We're Not Your Colonies" exploded, trending across continents. Young Africans from Lagos to Johannesburg, from Dakar to Nairobi, flooded platforms with messages of support. Videos of students chanting Traoré's words filled timelines. Western analysts debated whether Traoré had overstepped, or whether Trump had miscalculated. But beyond politics, something deeper had shifted. For the first time in decades, Africa's image was not of desperation but of defiance, not of poverty but of power. Back in Burkina Faso, people gathered in markets, in schools, and in village squares to watch the clips on small screens. Every replay of Traoré's words was met with cheers, ululations, and songs. In that moment, He was not merely a president. He had become a symbol. And symbols, once born, cannot easily be silenced. Trump attempted to downplay the moment in later interviews, insisting that his words had been misunderstood. But the world had already chosen its narrative. Traoré's stand had entered the lexicon of global resistance. Other African leaders, emboldened, began to echo his sentiment in different forums. Policy analysts noticed an emerging shift. Africa was no longer positioning itself as a passive recipient but as an active negotiator of its own destiny. The confrontation had sparked something irreversible, a reawakening. What happened in that chamber was not just an exchange of words. It was a seismic shift, a declaration that Africa's time as a colony, political, economic, or ideological, was over. Trump had expected silence. Instead, he was met with history itself speaking back. And from the UN halls to the smallest villages of the Sahel, that echo would continue to resound. We are not your colonies.